Um, Good morning again to everyone. Good afternoon to other ones. And welcome to this panel session in which we are going to talk about this very important topic that is becoming more and more important each day in organizations worldwide. I'm referring to the subject of data governance, and today, more specifically, we are going to concentrate on data governance in parliaments. Well, let me present myself again. My name is Ricardo. I work in the Chamber of Deputies of Brazil for more than 20 years as an IT analyst. And recently, I received the mission to manage the data governance project that has the objective of designing and implementing data governance here in the Chamber. And I'm very glad to moderate this debate that for sure will bring many insights. I hope that insights that will arise from the experiences shared by you, our speakers, whom I, in advance, thank you so much for your time and availability to be with us at this opportunity. And just a brief introduction to the theme, according to John Ladley and other authors as well, data governance is the organization and implementation of policies, procedures, structure, roles, and responsibilities, which outline and enforce rules of engagement, decision rights, and accountabilities for the effective management of information assets. So, following the main topic of the event that approaches mainly AI in parliaments, we want to discuss how data governance plays a crucial role as an enabler for AI technology adoption by enterprises, including parliaments. And some reasons why data governance is so important about this context, it's related to the fact that when we talk about data governance, we deal with processes and practices that approach dimensions like data quality and reliability, data accessibility and availability, data privacy and security, ethical and responsible artificial intelligence, compliance and regulatory requirements, collaboration and cross-functional alignment, among others. So in summary, data governance is supposed to provide the necessary foundation for parliaments to effectively leverage AI technologies for legislative purposes. And so in order to talk about this subject, I'd like to introduce the five panelists of this debate session, who I know they are really high qualified professionals who with large experience in the information and data management disciplines. Let me start with Sabrina Vigneux. She's based in Quebec, Canada, and she has a vast experience in legislative and regulatory technology area by working on projects across the world to modernize legislative procedures based on solid data architecture. She has recently joined KPMG Canada's intelligent automation practice, where she works together with a multidisciplinary team to advise organizations on optimizing how normative content is managed and how new technologies like generative AI can be used to achieve this goal. Welcome, Sabrina. We'll have also Flavio with us, Flavio Heringer. He has been an IT analyst at the Brazilian Federal Senate. So he's my colleague he's my neighbor here at the Congress. We have already worked together in some projects. Welcome, Flavio. He's in the Senate for more than 30 years. He holds a postgraduate degree in public policy evaluation and has been involved in the construction of information models and processes concerning the parliamentary legislative procedures. We have also with us Ahto. He works as administrative director of the Chancellery of the Riigikogu of Estonia, which is the Parliament of Estonia, ensuring the creation, implementation, and management of IT solutions, supporting the activities of the Parliament and the Chancellery. We have also with us Alexandre Bess. He works at LegalBot, which is a startup company specialized in providing compliance services based on automation using artificial intelligence. So welcome again. Thank you very much for your presence with us. Let's start our debate. The debate will be based on 5 questions that will be addressed to all the 4 speakers. Actually, we were supposed to have a 5th one. He couldn't make it today. He had an urgent business trip that came up, and he couldn't make it to be with us at this opportunity. But I would like to actually remain with the 5 questions, and it will be addressed to all the speakers so that we can hear your thoughts about each point that is pointed out from each question. Okay, the first question I would like to invite Ahto to answer first. The first question is, in a parliamentary context, data governance becomes particularly crucial due to the intricate legislative procedures, diversity of stakeholders, and the public nature of many of the operations. Bearing this in mind, can you discuss the specific considerations and challenges that shaped the development of the Parliament's data governance framework? How does this framework cater to the unique aspects of parliamentary operations? Ahto?
Yes, thank you. So I'm not the greatest expert in the data science and management, but I'm representing about a different approach, how we are dealing with the data and the situation. So our budget is very limited, and then the human resources also quite limited. So I can't afford a department with a data scientist. Nevertheless, if you have 19 people, so it's overkill for us. So my approach to the data governance is primarily from the point of view is more about the information security. So, and it's primarily from the 3 important properties of the data. So it should be a data confidentiality, data availability, and data integrity. So all data is classified to 4 different importance level as well. So about the data availability, we are measuring availability of the maximum length of the single interruption. And is it possible downtime less than 1 hour, or less than 4 hours, or it could be at least 24 hours. So for the integrity, the source of the information and the fact of its modification, destruction must have probative value, or it is necessary to check the correctness, completeness, and up-to-date of the information in real time, or is it enough to integrity can prove not in the real time part, but nor isn't important at all. So there's also many different levels. And confidentiality, is it information top secret information, or it should be a information permitted only for the certain specific users? Access to information is permitted to the person requesting the access has a legitimate interest, or is it a public information? Access to information is not restricted, and every single more steps between this few things that and from this perspective we proceed. This is our approach to this data governance framework. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ahto. Flavio, could you share your comments about this point as well?
Well, good morning again. My perspective is a little bit different from Ahto because instead of being an IT analyst, I've been focused on the last decades, mainly in data systems and constructing systems for supporting the legislative process and the legislative information for the Senate, for the Congress of Brazil. And this means that my focus is much more on the quality, on the structuring, on the confiability, the trustness of the information, much more than in technological aspects like the security or the access properly and such things. And I'd like to make this primary remarks because all my answers will focus on these aspects. I mean, okay. At the first glance, I understand in your question, Ricardo, that we have really a lot of peculiarities, a lot of sensitive cases and sensitive uses of the information in the legislative environment. At least in Brazil, we have a huge complexity of processes, bicameral parliament with different rules from the Chamber of Deputies and the Federal Senate, and a lot of types of procedures, so that I think data governance, as we seen proposed in manuals and literature, it's a theme that we cannot approach, we cannot handle adequately in the Senate because of the lack of resources and personnel and such things. So we have our own characteristics, we have our own timelines in the day work of the Senate. We have frequent urgencies coming from the stakeholders and the clients. We have constantly changes caused by the dynamic of the parliamentary activity. And so we need that data governance matches and the fits to all these needs of adaptations, urgencies, and ad hoc procedures that we have to handle. So in the Senate, we face the reality that some procedures established in our internal norms, like the regiment, they are constantly surpassed by political agreements, so that we cannot establish a rigid process, and we have to, on the other side, provide information that can explain all these features to the citizen, to society. So I think that data governance, thinking about quality and the way we can give meaning, significance, and accuracy to information in the Parliament, in the Senate, we have to handle with all these kinds of problems. I could explain some examples, but I think my time is short for this. So I'd like to just make a remark, okay, that our stakeholders in the legislative process are not quite, managers. They are political staff, they are political persons. So it's difficult sometimes to explain for them all the difficulties to manage the requirements they have. So it's a kind of really complex task to do a good data governance in this scenario. So I like to close with two words that I think that must drive our approach. I think that flexibility and agility are keywords for data governance at the parliaments. That's my first thoughts about the theme. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Very good, Flavio. I understand very much what you mean about the constraints and restrictions about business in the business level in the Congress. And for sure, it's a very, very huge challenge in order to implement data governance. That's right. Sabrina, could you share with us your thoughts as well?
Yes. I'll chime in and maybe bring a different perspective as well, as somebody who is not in a parliamentary setting and have spent a lot of time in the private sector. So I bring a slightly different perspective. Maybe I don't want to necessarily say an outsider looking in, but somebody who sees operations from a different point of view. And I would say there are lots of considerations that come to mind when you want to focus on developing a data governance framework. And everybody just mentioned who has spoken, the nature of parliamentary context, the fact that it's adversarial in nature, it can be chaotic, it can be divided. There are rigid legislative procedures, lots of different stakeholders. And I think all of this is underpinned by something that we're trying to bolster, is the need for trust and transparency. And there's a lot of challenges sort of that come to mind when we're trying to cater and manage all of these things at once. And when I think about it, I think one of the interesting perspectives to look at this through is thinking of a data governance framework with a somewhat of a service delivery orientation. And that would refer more to a focus on providing effective and efficient data services to meet the needs of stakeholders within Parliament, but also parliamentary stakeholders aren't just within Parliament. There are also citizens, there are also academics, there are interest groups, there are think tanks, there's all kinds of organizations that also I would consider to be stakeholders. And that would sort of prioritize this high quality, accessible, timely data that would support parliamentary operations on the one hand, which is crucial, and decision making, but also support downstream users, which are important stakeholders. And I've been working with regulatory data lately as well. And that's even more the case when you think of compliance burdens that are directly placed on regulated entities. And there's a similar sort of dynamic with legislation. And some of the key considerations, and many of these have been brought up, and I'll try not to be too repetitive, but there's data access and sharing. There's also the consideration that has to balance out of appropriate levels of confidentiality and security that go along with that. There's a need to protect this sensitive information, but at the same time, Parliament is a public institution and has every interest in making as many documents available, and it is document-centered, amendments, committee minutes, Hansard, as timely as possible, but also as integrated as possible. And this is something that I think, and I'm speaking perhaps of Canada, and that isn't necessarily the case. They sort of reflect these internal divisions where we have, a centralized ministry that drafts legislation, and then that gets into the parliamentary. That's managed somewhat differently with a different set of systems. And I know we'll talk about interoperability, and I don't think we could talk enough about interoperability. I think it's extremely important. But the integration between these systems is something also that's extremely important because parliamentary data spans these different departments and systems, and doesn't necessarily care about the fact that they span these different systems, at least users of that data. So ensuring sort of a seamless data flow as much as possible is a huge consideration. And it's something that can't be considered as a parliamentary process alone. One thing that's become clear over the years is that legislative and regulatory data formats are often structured and exchanged in ways that align with internal processes. So, a parliamentary process or a regulatory elaboration process, which is good. But it does highlight the fact that there's often a gap between producers of data and consumers of data. And this is something that's really important because I work a lot with consumers of data at the same time as well. And let's consider an example where a research institute or a think tank wants to measure the impact of specific policies that have been translated into legislation. In this scenario, this think tank acts as a downstream user of legislative data to assess the effectiveness of enacted policies that have enacted into law. Some of the questions I might want to ask are, do I have access to different versions? How can I tell the differences between these versions? Can I model scenarios based on the information I have here? What about data integration and linkages? And this is really where thinking beyond Parliament is important. And I know I'm saying very big things that are very difficult to implement, but they are considerations as well that I think are important. Measuring policy impact often involves integrating and linking data from multiple sources and data sets, economic indicators, social outcomes, to really conduct this holistic analysis. Are there ways in our data governance framework of establishing these linkages or facilitating them? How timely is data updated? All of these are considerations. Data quality and integrity as well, which was mentioned, so I won't go too much into that, but maintaining all of this is a huge undertaking. And it's easy for us to sit here and say these are all considerations, and I'm very well aware that implementing it is a completely different beast. But these are some of the many considerations that come to mind, when we start talking about how to establish and manage and also continuously improve this data governance framework, which I see as sort of a living tree that needs to adapt to new scenarios and new technologies, obviously AI, which is one of them. And I think I've gone over time, so I will stop here.
Thank you, Sabrina, for this approach. I think it's very important because actually we see that parliaments are now learning from the private sector. Actually, we have the private sector as the pioneer on this field, I think. And then at this point of view is very important for our debate. Thank you very much. Alexandre, Bess, could you share with us your thoughts as well?
Okay. Oh, yes, Ricardo, how are you? I will complement what Flavio, Sabrina, and Ahto have said. Data governance, not just in the public, but in the private space, is quite hard. The feeling is we are not doing what we should or we could do because the dynamics is very fast. And every time we feel, oh, we have to do more, Another thought, another went in a place that people say, oh, we are doing perfectly well, like we would like to do, okay? But now we have another point of inflection, okay? I'm going to discuss a little bit before. My points about parliaments, especially, we have 6 or 5 or 6 points that is quite sensitive, like the information, the personal and privacy information should work with special case. The complexity of the flows is not easy like usually we see in the companies. The way how interact and give a data in real time that everybody could work together and put in working well is not easy to work. So it's necessary a hard basis to work well. So very sophisticated. And when we're talking about AI, a lot of things are changing, okay? Not just inside the parliaments, but how the people are using AI and how these stakeholders gonna interact with parliaments, And because that probably some things gonna change, not just the data governance. I think, in my opinion, we should consider another level, the semantic level, where you're talking about data governance, because usually when we are talking about data governance, we talk about metadata, we are talking about infrastructure, but semantic should be considered too. We can see some movements from regulators looking for this, and why? Because the way how the regulation is going to be actualized, going to be much more fast. Okay, and the way how the people gonna interact and ask to the parliaments about actualization gonna be faster too, For example, here in Brazil today, we are discussing about tax, A lot of people say, oh, we don't have time to analyze very well. So I saw people put inside the AI and ask about AI about this point, Though what they should spend 1 week or some days to analyze, they could do much more quickly. So when you consider AI inside these dynamics, some points of data governance should be rethinked, and not is wrong, but apprimorated, Like I said, semantic things and deontic logic and vocabulary, specialized to do that.
Very good, Alexandre. Okay. Continue.
Just to finish, Flavio said 2 points is very important. The data governance should give meaning and significance for who are interacting with data. So what we have optimized is this point. But the way how we're going to optimize this, you change. And we are doing now.
Yeah, I see common points between your idea and what Flavio has answered, because you're pointing out the semantic layer, and he also has some initiatives on modeling significance to the data as well. So he's very focused on this, which is very good. Going for the second question, which is more related to specifically to the data quality, which was somehow touched in this first ideas. We see the second question as after learning about the unique challenges and considerations that influenced your data governance framework. It's clear that maintaining high quality data quality is a key aspect of these processes, especially given the significance of trustworthy data in parliamentary decision making. Could you delve deeper into the methods and strategies your framework employs to maintain and enhance data quality in parliamentary operations? This question, it was originally addressed for Neemias first, our colleague from Angola, from Parliament of Angola. He couldn't make it, as I have mentioned. But I'm taking the risk that having heard you in this first cycle, I think that I'll ask Flavio to start with this answering this question, because I think the focus that he has brought in his first talk was about this dimension, I think. Also, Sabrina talked about this, and I think it's. Can you start, Flavio, with this answer? Thank you.
Okay. It's a very important point. I mean, data quality is a key aspect, not only for the internal systems, internal procedures to make the dealers, the personnel, the parliamentary staff aware of what is really happening, what's really getting the flow of the legislative process, but also for the society. Society has a huge role in public policies and a huge role in the parliamentary debate, and they have to be correctly and truthfully informed about what is happening in Parliament. So in the Senate, I mean, I can share with you a few ideas about how we can manage and improve data quality. And I think that we have been investing a lot of time and resources in the quality of the systems that will support the registration and the publicity of this information. What we can tell you about this is that we have to understand that we, along the last decades, we are shifting from textual free kind of information for more structured and controlled data. So as you know, the Brazilian Senate started investing in IT resources in the 1970s. So at that time, a lot of information was just put in databases in textual form, and we have to upgrade it to more structured, relational, and decentralized structures. So this is a first point. I mean, we have to be investing a lot in structuring and developing skills in persons inside IT and the business of the legislative process to understand and apply it correctly. The second point that I would share is that we, since 2008, we are investing in have a quality area, a data quality supervision established in an organization on the business side of the organization, not in the IT side of the organization of the Senate structure. So this is a kind of team that is constantly looking for what has been produced in terms of systems and information, and trying to enhance the quality and improve the quality of the data and the consequent information for open data and internet portals and such things. And the last thing I'd like to share is that we are also investing in active transparency. We are not waiting for demands from outside. Everything we structure, every information that we put in our databases, we actually offer as soon as possible for the society. So I think that it is one of the key elements for quality, because the data is submitted to a lot of persons that can observe, correct, adjust, or even criticize the way we are sharing and the quality of the data we are providing. So I think that these are the three main points I'd like to share of how we view the data quality at our side here at the Senate.
Okay, Flavio, thank you. I think that it's very important the relation you brought about the close relation between quality and transparency, and also the how worried you are on establishing procedures and processes on data quality more aligned to the business than to the IT. I think this is a challenge also that we have to learn in our parliaments. Very good. Thank you very much. Ahto, could you share your thoughts as well with us about the subject?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
We are trying to keep our framework simple and agile and also very effective. So as I said, I can't afford a department with this data scientists or department who is a main job in data governance and following such kind of themes and so on. So our strategy is that we use distributed liability. It means that we have designated the data owners for almost every data what we own or creating, and every owner's liability is ensured that their data is available to those whom it is assigned, or it's publicly available to everyone, or you have to make data public it at agreed time, and also every data producer is responsible about his or her data quality. So if it's possible to help data creators, we choose or choosing or filling correct data. If it's possible to help them, then we try to make for they live easier. So if they need classified data or choosing keyword, then all possibilities are already in the different kind of info systems, and they are just to choose them. So not fill it by hand. So and also they can turn onto the necessary specialists who will help them, but we do not have specialists who are only for one task, like a keywording or disclosing data. So we are trying minimize with technical matters our quality drop. When you're developing a new systems, we're trying to think ahead as much as possible and not write down everything in a code. And we are also trying also be as flexible as possible. If some fault will happen, then we are able to improve and fix the data. And if it's necessary to make some changes to our data architecture, then we also make it, but it's not happening too often. For supporting our decisions making process, we are not collecting and storing all the necessary data in a parliament, what is necessary tasks, but we are using all the data what is available for us from the other data collectors. Mostly are available in open data format, or we have opportunity to make queries from to other databases on registers. So in Estonia, it's not allowed to collect already collected data from some other authorities. So that's prohibited. So if we need to know where somebody is living, then we are just making query to that database, not just collecting the data for us. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Ahto, it's very interesting the point you brought about the scenario we just described about this budget constraints and the restrictions that you have. So you have to prioritize, and I see that you have associated quality to accountability, and this is very important and very interesting that we have as I think it's a basic policy. It's an urgent action actually in the data governance discipline to establish the roles and the accountability that for sure, even with some technical restrictions, we are able to see or to know who owns what, right? So it's very important, very good. Thank you very much. Alexandre, now it's your turn.
Okay, I'm gonna explain. I think it's better. I'm gonna explain how we do inside. To us, data quality is a huge. It's very important. We have a team with 4 guys working full, and the cost of processing is pretty hard. What we base it on principles wrote after the 2008 crisis by BIS. BIS saw that not the data that the banks are using, but how the data are offered, reported to make decisions was important. And usually how we are open data intermediary is not just the quality, not just the transparency, not just accountability, but how quickness, how timeless we are, and how easy to make decisions is important to our clients. Okay, so these dimensions we consider, you know, the best way to understand, or easiest way to understand how a company like us look to data quality, we can assess the principles of risk data aggregation from BIS, and this material is pretty good, you know. Kinds of dimensions to us is important: accountability, completeness, robustness, timeless, abrangence. You know, we track everything. Usually, the people don't understand how many logs we record, but it's amazing. You know, for everything you click a point. You know, we record this kind of log. Why? One's gonna be important, you know, is quite indiscutible how data we have to record to do this job well, you know. So we change a little bit because we have a pressure for our clients, but you can have a point of view how private companies, you know, usually make this, you know, and parts of this we can use in public data in parliaments.
Okay, very good. Okay, very good to know that these initiatives are being actually tested and bringing some good results, right? With this technique. Very good.
Yes, Ricardo, what they saw in the crisis, sometimes they have this data inside, but they could access and they couldn't use it to make a decisions, you know. So the way how you organize and you can retrieve this information is really, really important. And when we see to parliament data, it's quite important to see how the flow works, to see what impacts or not impacts, or what we should come back or not, you know, this point.
Very good. Very good, Alexandre. Thanks a lot. Sabrina, we want to hear from you.
All right. I think from my experience, what I'll focus a little bit more on is specifically the legislative data. I know parliamentary procedures and work is much more than that, but I don't want to overstep and say something that's silly or not true. So data quality is of course fundamental, and it can be obviously challenging because of complexities of parliamentary process and also of how documents or how legislative documents or data is processed through this entire sort of chain of events, right? So one of the first things that comes to mind is standardization and documentation, which I don't think is shocking to anyone here. Standardized data formats, structures, definitions to, you know, make sure that there's a certain consistency and clarity across different data sets is important. And then I also heard earlier adopting data dictionaries, metadata standards, you know, whether you adopt them or you use existing ones. In any case, you know, those help document the meaning of these data elements, which is very useful also, and I keep saying this, for users of this data beyond just the parliamentary setting. So that's all important. And the documentation about how this was done and what these structures mean and what they reflect is also really useful. You know, providing insight into how data is structured is inherently useful. Versioning that documentation is also useful to show how things have evolved over time. And, you know, the go-to for these are, I'm not sure how you say it, archivists, librarians. These people are, you know, key in these kind of decisions and structuring. And I think that I've learned so much from librarians over the years that I think they have an important role to play in this. There's also making the data available, which was brought up. Open data is one thing, but making it available via bulk download. Via API, Congress.gov is an example of this as well. And also in multiple versions to be able to track that point in time of how legislation has changed is fundamental. And when I say sort of making it available, you know, it's also maybe, and, you know, I'm stepping out here and saying, what about collaboration and peer review? Engaging multiple stakeholders in the data quality, you know, assurance process can help identify things. For example, I think the Washington, D.C. City Council publishes its laws, and this is maybe at the end of the process on GitHub. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean there's the whole versioning approach and use of GitHub, but it does mean that somebody can point out an error or mistake, do a pull request that it be corrected. So having this type of engagement is you know, an interesting way of involving external stakeholders and also being very transparent and very visible in how, you know, this data quality is managed. Another important thing is versioning, and is a huge challenge. And I was talking about it this week with the team that I work with here to introduce this concept, this complexity in legislation to people who don't necessarily have it on their radar. And a lot of people say, oh, we'll just put it in GitHub. And it's a way, but it's a lot more complicated to manage versioning. Amendments aren't actual versions in many cases. They're just instructions to a different document. So there's a lot of complexity there. And there are several sort of reports that come out of how, parliaments or legislatures debated the wrong version of a bill or of a draft or whatever the case might be. So I think versioning is a very important thing to consider and, make sure that there is a system or there is an approach to make sure that your versioning system and your document versioning is correct. Because again, undoing, say, a wrong version of a bill is adopted has real consequences, and is something obviously that's important when you're looking at this data quality. There's the auditing process also that goes with version control, differencing tools also that are very useful, and there are more and more sophisticated ones that allow you to see the impact of different versions of legislation, one of which is being used in the House of Representatives right now in the United States, which I could imagine being extended to many different scenarios to be able to actually visually see the differences between two versions of legislation. It's a little bit different than sort of the source data quality, but these are, I see, analytical layers or tools that allow you to assess the data quality, perhaps from a user perspective, beyond really just sort of manipulating that raw data that might be XML, it might be JSON, it might be something else. There's so much more. But I will let the debate continue.
Yeah, it's a very fruitful theme. We have so many points to discuss, but I think that you brought some precious ideas about the standards. I think it's a key point actually, and I share with you very much the experience with the librarians and archivists. I think they're so important in this process of data governance, and I think we have very much to learn from them. It's very good, very good, very good point. Moving ahead to the third question, we have here, given that we've discussed the framework and its emphasis on data quality, another crucial aspect that comes into play, especially in a diverse and multifaceted institution like Parliament, is interoperability. Since data and information must flow seamlessly across various departments and functions for effective decision-making, could you share how interoperability and data integration is achieved within your data governance framework? So sorry. How does the framework support effective data sharing and usage across different systems and sectors in the Parliament? We talk about Parliament, but we know that we are in a more broader approach. So feel free to add your thoughts and in the experience you have on the private sector or public. It's okay. I think everything is applicable in this topic. I think Flavio, it's you again.
Okay, that's a good point. Interoperability and the data integration. We have a great concern about these themes in the Senate. I mean, we've been working together, Ricardo, for the last decades, trying to integrate and make some kind of interoperability between the chamber and the Senate. It's a huge task, and we are getting good results in that. But internally, we have a lot of systems that manage legislative and legislation information. I mean, so it's good to understand that because of our culture, our restrictions, we have a lot of dependence on human beings to provide interoperability and data integration, much more than structured processes of building the systems. And what we do here in the Senate. At first, we have a special characteristic that we have the continuity of the teams a long time. I mean, we have a very stable career inside the public sector in Brazil, so that we can build teams that will endure for a long time. So these teams, they are a very important piece, a very important part of this construction of interoperability and data integration, because they know each other, they manage the problems together, and instead we have a lot of, I would like to not say a lot, but some teams, different teams managing and dealing with different themes in the legislative process, like floor committees, flow of the legislative process, legislation. Instead, we have some themes. They are all under the same coordination and they all work together. So I think that it's a key point in order to make this interoperability really easy inside the Senate. But it's not easy because we have a huge method, a huge framework, but because we have persons that know each other, they work together for a long time, and they know when they have to talk with each other in order to construct and use data adequately. And so this is a point. Not only this, but we have a long relationship and a strong alignment with the scope of the legislative business. So IT teams and the legislative teams, they are very close, they are very up to date with each other movements. So we are also, we are very connected, and we are very partners in the building of the solutions, the IT solutions. So this is, I think this is a very important factor, a very important part of the good solution for interoperability. So the last point I'd like to talk about is we have a strong emphasis on conceptual modeling. So since 1992, when we started to bring data from legislative systems, all legislative systems based on text, and started structuring, we started building legislative models, conceptual legislative models, so that we now have a strong basis, a strong foundation in order to build systems integrated. These conceptual models, they are, in fact, the main foundation in order to guarantee the interoperability and the integration. So I think that is the great message I would share with you. I mean, the models are the basis, and the teams are the way we implement these models in each approach, in each system we have to build and we have to show to society.
Very good, Flavio. I think that you brought up two very important points. Main, in my point of view, is that despite of which is important also, despite you lean very much on people, because as you described, the teams are together for long. So you lean on people, but you also advanced on building conceptual models. I think this is a key point that is very much related to data governance. because somehow you have to catalog this objects and all these descriptions and all this information in your framework, so that you can retrieve these models and put them in place. Very, very good points. Thank you, Flavio. Ahto, what's your experience about this? Could you bring some thoughts about this data integration in your environment?
Yeah, so data governance in our interoperability task is very important. So because all of our systems are interconnected, so we use very high automation as possible. So like if you store user data in one system, so every other system must use the data from this user storage system. Plenary sittings as a process is one of the most complicated processes in our parliaments. This process has implication to all our systems. Almost all our systems are linked together, so that the results of us is a high quality data and with minimal data loss, and positive as possible, and done with little human cost as possible. So if voting has happened in a plenary sitting hall, then it's finished. Then it goes automatically through 3 or 4 different systems and will be available on the website maybe during seconds. So the delay is minimal. Sometimes the new legislation process it is starting from the draft, which is coming only electronically with all the metadata from the government. And data is coming through the Estonian secure data exchange environment called X-Road, and to where our systems also have interconnection. So we are not sending information just through the emails or sending papers in a governmental level, so only in electronic way. And of course, this X-Road is a freeware for everyone, so every country who wants to use it can start using it yesterday. Not tomorrow, but they should use already in yesterday. I really like that our data is interconnected and moving from system to system magically without any human intervention. And so it should be everywhere, I believe. Any concerns is that when I need to make some new features, like for the plenary sittings, I need to publish this new data, and I need to also publish this data on the website, then I need to make changes sometimes to every connected systems, and this taking just a little bit more extra time. And troubleshooting of this data moving is sometimes hard. Mistakes sometimes happens. It's rarely, but it happens. So people are very creative when it comes to them. So that's it's just a way for prepare of everything. So, and I believe that's all from me.
All right, Ahto, thank you very much. We know that interoperability in Estonia, I think it's known worldwide how Estonia is a benchmark for this theme, and for sure you have a lot to learn from experiences that are occurring there in your environment. Very good, thank you very much. Sabrina.
Yes, I'll try and stick more again to legislative documents and you know what I know, but yeah, I definitely agree that Estonia is definitely sort of a beacon on the horizon when it comes to sort of leadership on this front, and is sort of a model that we often look to as sort of an example of modern approaches, and really data first approaches or digital approaches to managing managing information. So yeah, I mentioned interoperability earlier. I keep mentioning interoperability because it's so important. Interoperability often points us to standards and protocols for data formats and structures and interfaces too. Interface is important because it can, as a user, I'm not sure if you go to sort of, say you have a website of consolidated legislation, and the interface for how you would track bills or how to track parliamentary information is completely different. You know, for a regular user, these sort of organizational differences can be somewhat confusing, whereas, you know, as someone with a legal background like I have, there's a whole sort of chain of events that leads up to this that logically would be sort of connected in an interface. That is similar, but that's often not the case. And it sounds sort of not that important, but it truly is. When you have to sort of shuffle between different sites to try and understand this whole chain of events that led from my introduced bill or even my policy documents all the way up to my consolidated or my codified version, and you have to go through many different places to get that, that can be sort of confusing, and it can be a barrier, an obstacle to sort of a clear understanding of what the law is or what legislation is at a specific point in time. And the parliamentary process is really sort of one sort of step within that. So that's important, having different systems to understand and process the data consistently, but also sort of presenting it in a way that is clear and that is sort of digestible, which is something sort of that is very important. And I think that my major point through here, and there's many different things we can talk about, exchange and integration platforms, APIs and web services, which I talked about earlier, as well as making, you know, that data available. But I think interoperability is something that's important in the sense that, and I keep saying this, is that a lot of these data structures that we have reflect the organizational silos that exist between chambers. I think Flavio mentioned it earlier, and this is the case in many jurisdictions, you know, where data frameworks will reincorporate and reflect existing silos rather than looking for opportunities to integrate. And I understand why that happens. There are many sort of reasons. It might be procurement. It might be just different tool sets that mean that, you know, certain data formats can't integrate, don't play well together. You know, one organization or one jurisdiction where we implemented, you know, modernization tools, bills were drafted in one format, converted into another format to be tabled in the legislature. Amendments are in another format that aren't necessarily sort of integrated to how bills are structured, that need to be manually reincorporated into the bill and then reconverted to sort of update or publish a draft bill or a bill version to a site. You know, this introduces errors, but also isn't just a, you know, an efficient way of working. And I think a lot of the things we need to think of is not a data governance framework is crucial to this. Having high quality data is crucial, but I think it's also an opportunity in so much as that opportunity exists to transform processes as well, and really think about how we can integrate across these organizational silos and not necessarily reflect our internal operations when it comes to establishing these frameworks and implementing them as well. And I know that this is a huge, enormous, gigantic challenge, but I will keep talking about it because I have hope.
Very good, very good. I think you brought a point very interesting about the how worried are we with the implementation of the interfaces. I think this is a key issue that we have to model in order to guarantee interoperability to happen fairly. I think this is a very good point. Thanks so much. Alexandre, it's your turn.
Ricardo, listen, all of you. I agree with Flavio about the human aspect of interoperability. So our experience when I'm talking about interoperability, design a protocol, design API. Now the most issues are solved, you know, but try to change the mind of your counterparts, you know, the others. It's pretty hard. For example, we operate in different sectors. The banking sector is multipolarized. It's quite impossible to change something when you're talking about interoperability, and it's in global view, So when Flavio says, one of huge point of leverage of Senado, Brazilian Senado, is the team, and the team works together and think together. Is I agree completely with you. Once where we are discussing in your team about interoperability, our developers say, the problem are the humans, and I agree a little bit, because it's quite hard. You try to disseminate a kind of interoperability when you're talking about a country like Brazil, is a continental country, thousands of cities, and we have a lot of friction, So the human aspect is really, really important and should focus a lot, in my opinion. And talking about interfaces, I agree with you, Ricardo, and Sabrina is important. And when we are talking about large language models, LLM, ChatGPT, in my opinion, is a inflection point, because for me, is a huge decoder, LLM gonna be a way how the people gonna ask how I gonna what I should do in respect with this code of law. I'm not gonna read a law in the future. I'm gonna ask in a chatbot, or go to Alexa and say, what can I do with this? I infringe a kind of law when I do this way of thinking, a way of activity, this act. So the interaction, the way how we're gonna interact with law gonna change a lot in the next years, because this kind of technology that now we have access,
Yeah, that's very challenging, actually. And you mentioned about the how people are important in this process, and this touches the next question, actually, that it states like this: it's data governance not only relies on technological infrastructure, but also on the people who handle and use the data. In this context, could you elaborate on how strategies implemented within parliaments to improve data literacy and provide training ensure that parliamentary personnel can effectively understand, use, and manage data, forming a foundation for potential future technologies like AI? I'd like to start with Sabrina, and I would like to actually, she already, I think in the first answer, she pointed this gap between data producers and data consumers. I think it's somehow related to this point raised by this question. Sabrina.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm glad we're talking about the human aspect here, because I think in this case, and when it comes specifically to future technologies and how we can leverage those, I think leadership here is foundational, and compassionate leadership. And there's a certain and this might sound like I'm zooming way back and talking about something that's not necessarily immediately relevant, but it's relevant to sort of any environment where you might introduce something that's potentially disruptive to business as usual. And one thing we know about parliaments is that there's entrenched traditions and ways of doing things that haven't necessarily changed in a very long time, and introducing sort of these disruptive technologies can be something that's frankly very scary, very intimidating, very uncertain. And there's a lot of change that needs to be managed. So I think leadership here is foundational, and the impact of something like AI can't just be looked at through the lens of, the next 6 months, the next year, the next 2 years. We have to look at this through the lens of decades. I think the change here is going to be incremental, and focusing on preparing for it is important. AI is going to change workplace innovation, productivity, and we're asking these questions we've probably never really asked before, and there's a human side that's crucial really to consider in all of this. And the more digital we become, the more sort of trust and organizational values are very important. So with all of that said, I think that some of the strategies, and we've heard it a lot, and I think I heard it in an earlier talk, and we keep hearing it, is sort of upskilling. And I know, you know, we can sort of roll our eyes and be like, yes, but I think it's something that's obvious, truly fundamental when it comes to thinking about how we're going to sort of adjust to, you know, potential entire shifts in paradigms of how work is done. You know, more specifically is data literacy, training programs, tailored to specific needs, roles of parliamentary, you know, personnel, enhancing understanding of data concept, techniques, you know, decision-making, and so on. I think that's sort of one approach you can take. I think something interesting as well is data visualization. When you think about all of this, you know, data and information, especially, you know, if there's, you know, based on data standards and so on, I think that there could be really interesting training programs that could emphasize visualization in that effective communication of these insights that we have. You know, they're sitting there. There are ways of modeling those and showing them in ways that can be really compelling and tell a story that often legislative language, and again, I'm focusing on legislative document, isn't that great at telling. You know, I think if I remember Luxembourg, I think it's Luxembourg, has some interesting data visualization on their site with their codes. And I think there's a lot that we can do on that front that, again, provides more of a user-oriented service delivery look at this. I think there are case studies, real-world case studies. You can look at practical exercises that you can do to interpret sort of, or simulate, again, this might be beyond parliamentary somewhat, but simulate the impact of, you know, certain legislation or policy in the future. And again, this is starting to think about how we might be able to do this with LLMs and use cases for that. There are many different approaches I think we can take. I think there's a certain amount of I want to say creativity, but also attention to sort of the workforce adjusting to this and being able to adapt to these type of changes. And I really do think that the answer lies in sort of a leadership that is going to sort of demonstrate this compassionate approach to working with a workforce that is going to have a different skill set. And this has happened, you know, in the past and will continue to happen in the future as well.
Very nice words, like compassion view. I think this is important at this point. We talk so much about technology and all the frameworks and stuff, but we have to include people.
Absolutely.
Actually, I think it's the most valuable asset we have, actually. Yeah. Very good. Data visualization, very good point as well. I think this is a key point for communication with people. This is how I think we're going to establish a healthy data governance that could actually be valuable to the organizations and the point of view of people. I think it's very, very good. Thank you, Sabrina. Flavio, your ideas.
Okay. As you said, it's a good point, Sabrina brought to us about the visualization. Especially, we have put in some efforts in how we can share with the society a better way of viewing legislation along several versions along time. So it's a kind of very interesting point, but we think that I think that we lack the same efforts in other areas. I mean, we have increased it and we have enhanced it, this kind of visualization in some areas, like the legislative documents, the legal documents, and the integrated process with a bicameral workflow, I mean, flow chart of how the bills, the drafts are developing along the parliament. So we have some achieves in these areas, but I just to be brief, I'd like to just answer this about the strategies we are implementing or we have implemented in order to improve data literacy. I mean, I can share mainly 2 points. I mean, the first one, it's not only the training, that's very important, formal training for new people. You see, in Parliament, we have a change of persons. In Brazil, it occurs at each 4 years when you have elections and you have new staff from parliamentary advisors and such things, and you have to train them. So we have formal training in some periods, but we have a lot of informal trainings occurring all day and all year. Informal trainings in meetings, informal trainings in special sections, in special moments between IT and business, legislative business people. So it's a very important point. I mean, that's the main way I think that we can improve data literacy inside the parliament, inside the parliament staff. And thinking a little bit broader, I mean that we have also spent some time, a lot of time, I mean, with the Chamber of Deputies, creating knowledge bases, glossaries, and dictionaries of legislative terms, legislative process information, so that it is public, not only inside, but for all society, to help they to understand better what we are talking about when we use this expression, permanent committee, special committee, leadership inside the parliament, and the role of the different kind of drafts we have. So I think that it's a very good effort. Unfortunately, I don't think that it can be the main effort, I mean, but it's important because it establishes a documental way of registering the information, this meaning of the words in order to improve this kind of interchange, interoperability aspects. So I think that's just a few thoughts about this aspect you brought to us, Ricardo.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Flavio. Very good points. We are actually getting short of time, so we already go pass the word to Alexandre. I think to continue your idea from the last question, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to explain a little bit what we are visualizing now. Okay, our company grow. We start the LegalBot to help the people consuming open data, legal and regulatory data. So our robots read, analyze, and send to who should read and inside the organizations. And these guys put a lot of things, what they are doing, the action plans, a lot of information. That part of this information, in my opinion, should be very important, should be very valid to the legislative or the regulators should receive, you know. And our points now, and try to understand what kind of data feedback we should separate to give back, you know. Because it would be like a real-time data, you know. You could publish in 5 minutes from, for example, the Central Bank of Brazil, we analyze and send inside the organizations. So in few time, we could receive some kind of information that it would be very nice to regulators and legislative have, who is reading, what they are thinking about, the risks they are thinking about that, you know, how many research they gonna apply to put in order, you know, to be in compliance again with this change, regulatory change, you know. So our point is begin to discuss with legislative and regulatory guys, regulations, and we have really done in the last years to give these feedbacks, and in my opinion, it's completely possible to do that. It's not hard, and I think it's gonna be the future for everybody, the continuous feedback from the all society, But I never see what kind of formation is good and should be opened, I really never saw this kind of discussion. I would love if somebody gonna say, oh, this is important, and the institutions, the companies should say, oh, this information can open it, to the regulators.
I see. Okay, this is a good point. Very good. Ahto, your comments about this question, please.
Yes, as I say, that our strategy framework is that we use distributed liability. So sometimes to start operators changes, or is needed to introduce some new features. We always make some dedicate the training them. And also, if someone will need some additional assistance, then we also offer that, so they will get on board as soon as possible. So we're using AI now for 3 years. So AI is not really future technology for us anymore. At the beginning, the AI-based speech-to-text system was for the making transcriptions only from the plenary sittings, but now also all our committees can use the system and for assisting creating the committee meetings in minutes. Another use case of the AI is for making the automated subtitling to the broadcasts of the plenary session and to our remote sitting software. And if the transcription of the plenary sittings being reviewed by the editors, they first fix some minor mistakes, correctness of the system, and correctness, if the system is around 95% and more, then for online subtitling, nobody's make any correction. So we knew that the data is not 100% correctly, and even the correctness is sometimes lower than the half. But we are know that, and we are not collecting or even storing this generated subtitles. Transcriptions is being published right after the first correction is done. Further language corrections will be made later, so the final description is not one-on-one with the said word as written. This kind of data can't be successfully used for training or retraining our language model, but we are using for the transcription AI. For training purpose, we are storing transcription what have only minor corrections, and basically we have 2 different data sets for the plenary sittings transcription. So they both are correct data, but a little bit different. I'm ready for the future if there is a need to train again our language model, or if we need quality text like ChatGPT training. And now we're investigating, and soon we will make some tests what for and how we can use this new ChatGPT technology. And we will start study how these new things can help us. Thanks.
Very good. I think Ahto has answered specifically more the last question, the fifth one. So which is good, because actually we are going to the last comments about this in this debate. And I'd like to, so we're going to finish with this last question. I think it's the one that links all this debate with the main topic of the whole event. There is emerging technologies like artificial intelligence may significantly influence parliamentary operations and decision-making processes. Considering requirements regarding regulation compliance, like the guarantee of data privacy and ethical usage of data, in your opinion, how might these challenges impact data governance practices in Parliament? I think that Ahto has answered this question, right, Ahto?
Not almost, but I can talk about these things a little bit more if you need.
No, it's because that's what was because we're talking about some initiatives of AI products that were and services that were already using, and I related this answer more to this point. And which was very good, because actually now we have all this points and information about your experience in this area on the usage of AI. That, as you said, it's not future, it's present actually. And so so our ending this debate, I think what we want to maybe hear from you in this last. Let's try to make it in 10 minutes to wrap up with this final question. I would like to start with Alexandre about this point. How you see like these challenges on these emerging technologies that are coming, that are already in place, how they impact governance practices.
Ricardo, esquece para mim. My answer is a quite radical. I'm sorry, it's a personal. We're gonna have 2 waves. The first one is gonna be law, like we are looking now. But I think in the future we have to change the infrastructure of data, to put in order the data privacy. The people doesn't discuss a lot it, but it's gonna be really hard put in order. Not just laws gonna save us. Okay, so I share opinion with Tim Berners-Lee. Tim Berners-Lee is the inventor of World Wide Web. They are trying to rethink how create a new way of internet that we could share our information, put who gonna consume the data, don't have access to the data, they're gonna process in the web, So I don't know if you're gonna use blockchain, we're gonna use this kind of technology, but just law gonna not solve all your kinds of problems gonna see in the future. The next years we're gonna discuss. We're gonna have a conscience of how important is the data. Others access our data, but this is a kind of problem that, in my opinion, we should see to infrastructure data technology. Okay. So I know it's quite radical, but so I think it's a good opinion to bring here, Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Point.
Very important point. Yes, we have to think about that. Very good. Ahto, do you want to add something to this point?
To the final 5th question, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe that today's technology offers new opportunities in the form of the AI. So, and we should be taking advantage of it. So I really hope that the regulations will be sane, not insane, and this technology can still be used. So sometimes I get some feeling that this anti-AI articles are also generated by the AI. So whatever the reason is, because already now most of us are unable to detect is this generated by the human or not, and most AI text detectors detect human text as AI generated. So vice versa already. And of course, we need to think about this data privacy and ethical use of data, and same times also most of unethical use and privacy violations are done by humans so far. And even though the Estonia is the most digitized country. We look into the future. In a couple of decades, there will be significant fewer physical people than now in Estonia. Or if we have some kind of positive things and we have same population, there will be still fewer capable of working people. So we have no way out. We must use new technologies even more if we want to be competitive in any business. So that's our way to live or survive, let's say.
Very good, Ahto. Thank you very much. Flavio.
Okay, briefly, I think I will not bring to you some new ideas, some innovation thoughts or things about this aspect of AI. But I like to share just a few remarks here. I think that we don't have much more challenges that we also have been dealing with in the last years. I mean, AI is a new approach in order to organize, search, and optimize some tasks. But the challenges about data governance are quite similar to the challenges we have been facing at the last years or decades. So I think that it's not a huge challenge. I mean, in order to think the aspects of data governance, I think that the main challenge is the use of AI in Parliament. Ahto told about many uses, many products that are being developed, and they are all good. I mean, we have plans to introduce this same or similar products here at the Federal Senate. But I'd like to let you with the two last things. The first one is that I heard at the last panel before we started here, a friend of us from the United States, Joshua, that told us that sometimes AI is a solution seeking for a problem. And I think of AI much more like he said. I think sometimes we are trying to introduce AI in our organizations because it's cool, because it's modern, because it's the future. But we don't know what we can do effectively and how much will it cost. I think that's an important point. And the second one, I think that the biggest challenge lies outside the Parliament. Sabrina told a little bit at the beginning about the public policies of measuring and evaluation, and it's a kind of task that I think that's the main goal of parliaments. I mean, we are in Parliament to produce good laws, to improve benefits for society, to regulate better the way we live. And I think that we shall think about AI as a tool to improve the political policies, the public policies analysis, and the public policies evaluation. And this needs a lot of integration and interoperability outside the Parliament with the executive branch and with the legislative branch. And this is much more than technology. This is a political agreement and a leadership task, a task that demands a very huge leadership that I don't think we have in our society. And I don't know about other partners here at this table. So that's the last things I'd share with you, and thank you for the opportunity of participating with you in this debate.
Thank you, Flavio. Thank you very much. Okay. Very good points. Sabrina,
I will go
So
super fast. I promise. So in a whirlwind, how AI use could impact data governance practices in Parliament, there's a few of them that come to mind. Enhanced data management, automating certain data management processes, improving data quality potentially. Compliance comes to mind over and over and over again as something that could be sort of an interesting use case. Intelligent data classification as well, which is something that's definitely sort of an interesting possibility. Classifying legislative documents, speech, establishing linkages between them, reports into predefined categories, streamlining organization, data discovery, predictive analytics are all things that we've talked about, monitoring, real-time monitoring, compliance reporting, and so on. So these are lots of sort of potential use cases, but I think ultimately, and I'll say it over and over again, is within this looking for opportunities to transform processes without necessarily just, latching artificial intelligence onto something. And you could see an improvement there, but there's an opportunity to see things from a more holistic lens insofar as that's possible. And I think sort of that's the step back that we need to take when we're evaluating how to adapt and how to incorporate this technology into processes, is think beyond the current ones and see where there's transformation. And that's it. I will stop now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sabrina, for your thoughts and the points that were brought here in this debate. Unfortunately, we cannot go to the final comments because of our time. I apologize about this, but I think we had a very, very good debate. I'm very glad that we had this opportunity here to hear from you all about all of this points and experiences, and this is so valuable to the discussion and for us to actually learn and get all the important things that are applicable to each environment, each organization, and looking forward to establish the data governance and to take advantage of all the profit that it can actually bring to us and our organizations. Thank you so much again for your participation.